I think it was Judge Young wrote in an opinion, I think last week, something about the country needs to, quote, stand up to Trump. I know, not something you typically hear a judge write.
No, this may be a violation of the ethics. I mean, I don't know.
Should any of these judges face impeachment? I think Senator Cruz was the one that brought that up.
We've said all along, everything's on the table.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Washington Times interview with House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, the man who oversees House impeachment proceedings and has been at the forefront of questions over government censorship and immigration policy. Thank you, Chairman Jordan, for taking time with us today. My first question is, we've tried to tally the number of lawsuits facing this administration, which I think we got to like 500 plus. It's kind of a record. And I wanted to ask you what you think, how you think lower court judges, district court judges are doing handling these lawsuits involving the president's executive orders.
Actually, we see some of the cases where, we don't like the decision from some of these courts and some of the judges, particularly when they issue like an injunction that applies nationwide. We've actually had legislation passed through the committee, passed through the House, which says when you have, I think there are 600 and some of these federal district judges, if they issue an injunction, it shouldn't apply nationwide. It should simply apply to the parties in the case in that respective jurisdiction. So we see some of those, but President Trump's actually won a lot of these cases too. When they go up in their appeal,
that's right.
He's done pretty good track record. But I think the biggest takeaway is this is the left. The left is always out to stop the president and stop the will of the people through the guy they elected President Trump. The left is out to stop him in any way they can, whether it's the courts, whether it's.
I was going to ask you, do you think the courts are the left's new political battleground?
I think it's everywhere. I think you see it with these mayors and governors in blue states and what they're doing with sanctuary cities, sanctuary jurisdictions. You saw it with the judge in Milwaukee a few months ago. The good guys were coming in the front door to arrest the bad guy, and the judge let the bad guy out the back door. So you see it all over.
Yes.
It's just, I always say the left's the left, and they're out to get President Trump. They're out to stymie and undermine his administration, and they've been doing that for a decade.
There's been some accusations from Trump supporters, right, that they see like Judge Boasberg as undermining President Trump's calls with turning the plane around.
Yep.
I think it was Judge Young wrote in an opinion, I think last week, something about the country needs to, quote, stand up to Trump. I know, not something you typically hear a judge write in an opinion.
They're probably not, that's probably maybe a violation of the ethics. I mean, I don't know, but it's certainly something you shouldn't hear.
People were kind of shocked about Judge Boardman with the 8-year sentence for or Sophie Roski now, I guess, the attempted Kavanaugh assassin. So at any point, should any of these judges face impeachment? I think Senator Cruz was the one that brought that up with the 8-year sentence.
We've said all along, everything's on the table. And we think the best way to address this is to use all possible avenues to, one, do oversight, get the facts out there, have hearings. We had, back in the start of this Congress, early in this Congress, we had former Speaker Gingrich come in and talk about this injunction issue. Then we passed legislation. We went and spoke to the Judicial Conference, which there's an annual thing. You can go in front of the Judicial Conference. I went and talked there a few weeks ago. And if we need to resort to other ways I think all that's on the table. Typically, the history of our great country has been that you don't impeach judges for stupid decisions or bad decisions. What we would, I think common sense would say is a poor decision. You have the appellate process for that. And as we said, earlier, President Trump's done pretty well.
As he climbs up, that's correct.
As they appeal some of these decisions from the lower federal district judges. So, but I don't think you should rule out impeachment. I just think you use every avenue you can, and then if you have to go to impeachment, that's something that should be on the table.
And then I know you've been at the forefront of investigating corruption within the Biden DOJ, Biden FBI. I know it was just released recently about the spying on the phones of, I think it was like 8 senators, Republican senators, and House lawmakers too. Do you have anything with your committee planned to do something with this?
We want to dig into this too.
Would that involve calling Jack Smith to testify?
Everything's on the table. We've brought in a number of Jack Smith's, the lawyers who worked as part of the special counsel. We've had Mr. Wyndham, we've had Mr. Bratt. We brought them in. We brought Mr. Wyndham back a second time. Those transcripts haven't been released yet, so we can't get into the details of what all took place in those interviews.
Excited to read those. Right?
But yeah, everything's on the table there. And understand what they did here. There were 9 members of Congress, 8 senators, 1 member of the House, who they got the phone records, who they were calling. I don't know why they picked these particular 8.
And it was after the Mar-a-Lago raid, is my understanding, right?
Well, but but I think the phone records, they got the toll analysis.
Okay.
The phone records, in 23 after Jack Smith was named special counsel. He was named in, I think, November of 22, shortly after the midterm elections. He's named, but I think the records go back to who they were calling back in the time frame around January 6, 2021.
Okay.
And my guess is they were picked, and this is a guess, they picked these individuals because they probably had conversations with the president.
Okay.
Maybe they knew that, I don't know.
Right.
If they're getting the records or they're calling the president. And then they were looking at, I think Jack Smith was focusing in on the Pennsylvania issue. So I think that's maybe why Mike Kelly, a colleague of ours from Pennsylvania, might have been swept.
Right.
We don't know, we're hazarding a guess here. But it's crazy that you're doing this. And then you couple that with what they did about a year before that, in the summer of 22, before Jack Smith is named special counsel, they went and took the phone of Scott Perry. So they take the phone of a sitting member of Congress. And we had the form that the FBI used and where they talked about what they were doing before they took his phone. They surveilled Scott, congressman. They surveilled him for 2 weeks. And it said, find out who he's associating with. Get photos of his residence and his car, his vehicle. Surveillance is a fancy name for spying.
Yeah.
So they're spying on a member of Congress, taking his phone, kept his phone for a full day, and he's like, you know how it is with your phone. There's your chief of staff. There were certain people he couldn't communicate with. Yeah. And they took his phone from him while he was on vacation with his wife and 2 daughters. So all that together, I think, just shows how ridiculous this was with Jack Smith and why we're talking to deposing the lawyers who work with him and are looking at what we may do with Mr. Smith.
With him, okay. And then on the topic of lawfare, you and I spoke previously for my book.
Yeah, congratulations.
And thank you. And you mentioned that you were looking into potential, coordination might be the word, between the Biden White House or Biden DOJ and some of these local DAs. I think you talked about like Fonnie Willis, what went on in Fulton County, Nathan Wade, potentially Alvin Bragg. Is there any movement there?
We're still looking at that.
I know there was questions. You did I think, interview with Nathan Wade and some of his billing.
Yeah, right. He couldn't remember
why he was at the White House.
He couldn't remember who he talked to in D.C. and who he met with and what was said. He couldn't remember much of anything from that interview, or from that deposition when we talked to him. Yeah, I think all that's important. We're still looking at that too. But I think really the bigger thing right now is in the last 10 weeks. Think about what we've learned from the whistleblower who came forward and said, it looks like Adam Schiff was encouraging the leaking of classified information. And the whistleblower, we got that from FBI Director Patel. Then the whistleblower who came forward to ODNI Director Gabbard and said, back in 2016, December 2016, January 2017, between election and inauguration, the intelligence community assessment, the report was actually changed. And it was done so at the urging of Clapper and Brennan. And then, of course, we also understood, and today Mr. Comey had to appear in court. We also understand that Mr. Comey and his chief of staff were leaking, based on reports, information about leaking classified information. And all the way back to 2015, 2016, 2017, this is when this whole thing began, this weaponization of government. And I think it's appropriate that Mr. Comey's been charged for making false statements to Congress. And
so twofold on that, what you just spoke about, do you think we'll see more indictments beyond Comey? I think there's a potential for John Brennan. I think Mr. Brennan, it looks to me like he may have misled Congress, and we're looking at that. And then we'll see, obviously in the end it's up to the Attorney General and the Justice Department, but I think Attorney General Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche
and Director Patel, I think they're all doing a good job.
And then you mentioned Adam Schiff, and I just have to ask, so with that behavior, he was pardoned as a member of the January 6th committee, but would there be any leeway to, I guess, go after him or indict him based on like activity unrelated to January 6th, or was that all kind of involved in the same?
That'd be a call for the Justice Department.
Okay.
I think you could, but again, that's
because I wasn't sure how blanket the January 6th committee
I don't think
was.
you can't give someone
Such a broad pardon.
Yeah, like a pardon for anything and everything.
It's an interesting question.
But the way they did frame that was like, I think if I have to go back and look at
it
the
said members of
yeah,
January.
and the I think the pardon particularly for the President Biden's family was pretty broad.
Yes.
Particularly one for his son, which I think could be problematic, but that's a call for the Justice Department.
Yes, yeah. Interesting topics. So our immigration a reporter, I should call him an editor because he still edits me, Stephen Dinan. I don't know if you've ever worked with him. He's great. He wanted me to ask you specifically about sanctuary cities. Is there anything your committee's doing right now to try to keep those in check? And especially now that we're seeing some of the violence with ICE officers like Portland, LA.
You got to look at the funding.
Chicago.
And we've had legislation. I have to check where the status of it is, but the funding is, federal dollars. You have to look at the dollars going to these sanctuary cities. And we've had hearings on this and provide oversight. What was the ICE will send a detainer to the facility, the jail, the county jail, the city jail, and they'll say, if this individual who's in your custody for some other crime, we think's here illegally, if you're going to release them, give us a heads up. And in some of these cities, it's a 48-hour time frame. If you're going to release them, just give us 48 hours notice, and so we can come. And there have been times where the city won't even do that. They'll just in the situation in Denver, Colorado, they actually stamped on there release to the street. So now instead of sending 2 agents to the jail to apprehend this individual who's here illegally and done some other crime, that's why they're in the jail.
So more than one law.
Yeah, they put them out on the street. And in this case in Denver, because this came up in a hearing, it took them 6 agents. The guy attacked one of the agents. I mean, you jeopardize the safety of the agents, jeopardize the safety of the public, and you jeopardize the safety of the individual, for goodness sake, instead of just doing it the right way. So for those kind of sanctuary jurisdictions, whether it's a city or whether it's a state, I do think you have to look at certain federal funds, maybe limited if you're going to impede federal law enforcement agents from enforcing federal law. And that, to me, frankly, this is what President Trump's doing right now.
Right. And it's part of the Insurrection Act, I understand. I know that's one of the I guess, factors that's considered when you can deploy. If
a federal facility is being threatened or something's happening or being attacked or impeding the enforcement of federal law by federal law enforcement officials, the president has every right to send in the National Guard.
Yes, yeah.
And that's exactly what the justification from the Justice Department when they said, yes, it's okay for the president to do that, certainly here in the capital city, which is different. I think that's
probably why the Ninth Circuit reversed that one lower court judge.
And certainly in Portland and Chicago and these cities that he's talking about.
And we'll see if that keeps happening. I'm going to quickly ask you about the shutdown. I saw a Reuters report recently. It said something about legislation would need to be passed by, I think it's October 13th, for troops payroll to process on time. Is that accurate? And why do you think Democrats like Senator Schumer, why do you think they're doing this? Is it because of the left-wing base? Is it because they're worrying about primary challengers?
Totally, yeah. Because, I mean, how else do you explain you voted for it 6 months ago, you won't vote for it now?
Yeah.
Same level of spending. What the heck's going on? You won't do it now because Chuck Schumer's having this debate with himself. It's like, do I do the common sense thing or do I do the left-wing thing because the left-wing has all the energy in our party now?
So how long do you think it's going to take him to come to an epiphany?
I believe only Chuck Schumer knows because it's like it makes no sense. And you rightly point out, we got all these people who, particularly law enforcement personnel and the military, federal law enforcement and our military who are still working, still doing their jobs, the good work they do, and they won't get paid after 2 weeks of this. So we're talking middle of the month here. And everyone knows that's not fair. Like most Americans, I think, are like, okay, this is happening. It's not a big deal to them. But when they find out that the troops aren't getting paid because Chuck Schumer,
they're still reporting to duty, and exactly,
because Chuck Schumer won't vote for what he voted for 6 months ago, they're like, this is ridiculous. And the reason he won't vote for what he did 6 months ago is because the left's pressuring him to. And what they really want is they want your tax dollars your viewers, your listeners, your readers, their tax dollars to be used to give health care, taxpayer-financed health care, to people who aren't here legally,
right.
non-citizens. And that makes no sense.
And I don't think polling never shows that's what the voters go for. I mean, I think even Gavin Newsom tried to make changes with Medicaid out in California over that. But you had a big win with Google recently. I think it was your oversight efforts led Google to reinstating some people who had been users who had been banned. I think it was COVID-related comments, election-related comments. Big tech, I think they even admitted that the Biden administration was pressuring them to remove these users and these posts. So what can be done about this? I covered that Supreme Court case at the time. I think it was 2024 when the Supreme Court said there was no standing for these people to challenge this under First Amendment. But it does seem like when you have big tech admitting that the government, the administration had come in and told them, what to do, pressured them, that there's free speech violations. Is there anything that we can do to avoid this in the future?
We have a good piece of legislation sponsored by a great member, and she's on our committee, Harriet Hageman from Wyoming, which is about if your First Amendment liberties are infringed by a government official, you have the right to go after them. Private right to go after that individual, saying you can't do that. So it's legislation. I believe we passed it out of committee last Congress. We're looking to do that again this Congress and move it through. But it protects just a little more teeth in making sure we can protect when government directly infringes on your First Amendment liberties. But understand the environment. I think this is really important. Remember when the Biden administration established the Disinformation Governance Board, as if a bunch of bureaucrats are telling you what you can say, what you can post, what you can tweet, what you can read. Frightening.
Yes.
And but for a bunch of us, good folks in the media and a bunch of us in Congress, people around the country saying this is Orwellian baloney, they would have kept it up, but they had to disband it, thank goodness. So this whole investigation into censorship, we really feel like we've made an impact, certainly President Trump and the team he put together and what he's done. But we feel like our investigation, we got the letter a year ago August, from Mr. Zuckerberg saying the Biden administration pressures us to censor. We did it. We're sorry. We're not going to do it again.
Please forgive us.
Yeah, and then they have, to their credit, they've changed policy, which is good. They went they got rid of the fact checkers and all that, and went to the community notes approach on Meta or on Facebook. YouTube basically and Google basically said the same thing. Yeah, we were pressured. We shouldn't. Said basically the same thing, and then reinstated people that they kicked off. So that's helpful. We're going to keep it up. Right now, the biggest threat's in Europe. What Europe is doing, we think it's just a matter of time before an American gets censored with the Online Safety Act in the UK and
people are seeing jail time.
Digital Services Act in EU. So remember we had Nigel Farage about a month ago testify. He did a great job about this issue. And the day before he testified, the comedian Graham Linehan was in Arizona. He's an Irish citizen in Phoenix, tweets something. Same day as flying to the UK, lands at Heathrow Airport and gets arrested. So an Irish citizen tweeting in America gets arrested in the UK. Like, it could have been an American citizen.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's how bad it's gotten in Europe. So we think this is really important. We had a witness last Congress, journalist, Rupa Subramanya from Canada. She covered the whole trucker blockade issue, if you remember. And when she testified, she said, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, but she said, the hallmark of Western culture, Western civilization, is free expression. You can debate. And it's like if we lose that, at the same time last Congress, RFK Jr. testified, and he said, great line, he said, when you look at history, it's never the good guys who are for censorship. It's always the bad guys.
Yeah.
Always the bad guys. So we want open debate. First Amendment, most important thing we have in our Constitution is our ability to talk. Because if you can't talk, you can't practice your faith, you can't share your faith, you can't petition your government, you don't have a free press. And that's what the left goes after.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for your good work, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you.